Hey, welcome back. I'm Florence, and we are here doing Welcome Spring Online, and we are going to be doing our kids programming about shadows and spring. Well, why are we talking about shadows at springtime? Well, that's because this is the spring equinox, and what the spring equinox is, it's the balance between the dark and the light. And so it's a great time to think about how all of us are made up of dark and light, light and shadow. I'm Florence, and this is my shadow. She has been with me all my life, ever since I was born, and she's going to be with me the whole time. And so, you know, in a lot of ways, she's kind of like my oldest friend. I've got a light here so that you can see her even on my tapestry here. And we can talk a little bit about how we can use our shadows and get along with them. Now, sometimes in paganism, we refer to the shadow as sort of the bad self, and that's a perfectly legitimate way to do things. But I think about our literal shadow as actually just being a manifestation of the way that we interact with light in the world, because our shadows are created by light. And we can use them, shadows, as sort of like a friend and a way of appreciating where the light or the life is coming from in our world. We can talk to our shadows. You can have your shadow as kind of sort of like an imaginary friend, but one that you can actually see. So, you know, if you've got a problem that you can't tell anybody else about, talk to your shadow. Your shadow is a very good listener. And your shadow is exactly like you, because your shadow goes everywhere that you go. So your shadow might have some perspective on the matter. You can talk and think it out and ask your shadow to help you tap into that deeper, smart voice that's inside of you, that inner wisdom that helps us make good choices. You can also play with your shadow. In the comments, I'm going to post a whole bunch of links that you and your parents can use to do some really fun shadow games that we were going to do. We can do things like make shadow puppets. Shadow puppets is an ancient art form, particularly in places like Indonesia, where they have beautiful, elaborate shadow puppets and shadow plays. And so I'll show you some ways that you can make shadow puppets there. Another really fun thing to do, particularly to appreciate the changing of the day, is that you can make a sundial. A sundial is a really ancient way. Before we had clocks, before we had watches, even before we had old tick-tock grandfather clocks, how could we tell the time? Well, we tell the time by the sun going through the sky. So if you put a stick into the ground or a paper plate and you draw a clock around it, 12, etc., and then you orient it to north, then the shadow will actually tell you what time it is. And that works all year round, even as the seasons change. It's really quite cool. But you can also do shadow plays. You can make a doggy. Can you see that? My favorite. There's the classic rabbit. You can make a bird. It's really easy. See, so what I want you to do is, when you've got time, get something that makes a lot of light. You can get a very bright flashlight, or I've got a little lamp here, and bright! And I put the cover up so it casts a lot of light. And that will make a really bright shadow on the wall that I can play with, I can talk. And so I want you, when you get a moment, find a place where you cast a really good shadow and go ahead and see what kind of shadow creations you can make. Can you make an octopus or a cuttlefish? Can you make a fish? Can you make a goose? What kind of shadow creature are you going to make? Also, you can have a lot of games. These days, touching each other is not so good. But if you're out with some friends and you want to play a game, but you don't want to actually be touching or grabbing each other, you can play shadow tag. And that's like freeze tag, except what you're trying to do is step on the other person's shadow. It works better if it's a really sunny day, but you can go run out and try, and once you step on somebody's shadow, they have to freeze until they count to 10, and then they can run and they can try and step on your shadow. So it's a lot of fun. Great when the sun's out. awesome. But there's also ways that we can use shadows. When we tap into shadows, we're tapping into sort of the more imaginative part of ourselves, because shadows, they're sort of here and they're gone, and sometimes they're sharp and clear, and sometimes they're all amorphous. And you can really use your imagination to make shadows come to life. And that's why I've got this, my favorite shadow book, Shadow Chasers. So give me a moment, let me adjust the light a little bit more, and we will read about the Shadow Chasers. Shadow Chasers by Ellie McKay. There is a time, as evening paints the summer sky, or in this case, the spring sky, when shadows come out to play. Look, they're making shadow puppets and imagining that they come alive. If you follow them and try and catch them, they will flit and flutter away. There they're going, chasing the shadows, along the trees and through the spaces in between. There's all kinds of shadow creatures. That looks like it might be a bunny, but look, it's just a stone and some ferns. And that looks like it might be a squirrel, but I think it's just a weeds and a rock. Huh. They hide beneath the leaves. But when the wind blows, they are on their way. Playful shadows never stay. Looks like the shadows of rabbits. Oh, the shadows, they move swiftly, ever changing, just out of reach. There they go. What's that? The shadow of over there. What do you think? Or that? Yeah. And you catch one. Do you think they caught it? Do you think can you really catch a shadow? Let's see. Only to find it isn't there. Slippery shadows swimming and diving until they're out of sight and nighttime falls. Do you see the moon coming up between the trees? Think we're going to see too many shadows at night? The warm house calls you. Time to go home. Oh, look, he's giving her a piggyback ride. Ooh, maybe it's getting a little bit chilly. It's time to say good night in their snuggly beds. And you will meet your shadow again in the early morning light. Yeah, because your shadow is always with you. Can be a good friend. So go ahead, play with your shadow, get to know it. Make it a friend, make it an ally. It's always going to be with you.